The stars above Epsilon 3 were burning red. They looked like open wounds scattered across the sky, bleeding light into the endless dark. Below those stars, a single human ship drifted, the Valkyrie's Grace. Once a proud symbol of humanity's fleet, now it was a dying beast, its hull torn and engines flickering with the last breaths of power. Inside the bridge, Commander Lyra Hale stood alone. The lights flickered weakly, casting shadows across her pale, tired face. Every breath she took was laced with smoke and dust. The air smelled of ozone, metal, and death. Her crew, her family, was gone. Every voice she had once relied on had been silenced, one by one, until only she remained. Outside, through the cracked glass of the viewport, she could see them, the Xyreth Dominion fleet. Thousands of warships stretched across the void, glimmering like steel monsters in the starlight. Their formation was perfect, cold, and merciless. They had come for her, for the last human. "Commander," came a faint voice through the static-filled comms. It was her ship's AI, its voice distorted and breaking. "The Xyreth fleet captain requests communication. Shall I open the channel?" Lyra didn't answer right away. Her hands rested on the control panel, trembling slightly. She stared at her reflection in the cracked glass, a woman with streaks of blood on her cheek, her dark hair matted and tangled. Her eyes, though tired, burned with something fierce and unbroken. "Open it," she said finally. A flicker of light filled the bridge. The image of the Xyreth fleet captain appeared before her, a towering alien figure with silver scales, eyes like molten glass, and armor that gleamed with the arrogance of power. Behind him, his officers stood tall and silent, their every movement precise, mechanical. The captain tilted his head, his long, narrow mouth curving into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "So," he said, his voice like grinding metal, deep and echoing, "this is the final human ship. How disappointing." Lyra said nothing. She only stared at him, her expression unreadable. The captain stepped closer, his holographic form towering above her. "Tell me, human, who stands before us now, who commands this dying relic?" For a moment, silence hung between them. The hum of the failing engines was the only sound in the room. Then Lyra straightened her shoulders, her voice calm and steady despite the chaos around her. "Someone your legends warned about," she said. The captain's eyes widened, then he let out a harsh, mocking laugh that filled the bridge. "Legends? You think your kind is the stuff of legend? Humanity is finished. You are nothing but dust clinging to a dying flame. You should have surrendered." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Maybe, but surrender was never really our thing." Before the alien could respond, she cut the transmission. The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving only silence and the dim light of the bridge. For a moment, Lyra stood still, feeling the weight of her words hang in the air. Then she turned to the ship's AI. "How much power do we have left?" The AI hesitated. "Reactor output at 7%. Weapons systems, 42% functional. Shields, unstable. Commander, the odds of survival are below measurable range." Lyra gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Below measurable range, huh? Sounds like a normal day for humanity." She wiped the blood from her face with the back of her hand and stared at the fleet again. The enemy ships were closing in now, their weapons locking onto her crippled vessel. Every instinct told her to run, but there was nowhere left to go. "Commander," the AI said softly, "what are your orders?" Lyra's hand hovered over the control panel. Her mind was calm, her heartbeat steady. She thought about Earth, the blue world that had once been her home. About the families lost, the children who would never see the stars. About every fallen ship that had fought before hers. She wasn't going to let it end like this. "Route all remaining power to the main guns," she said. "Target their command vessel." "Commander," the AI warned, "that will leave the ship defenseless. Shields will fail." "I know," she interrupted. "Do it anyway." The ship groaned as systems redirected power. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the floor trembled beneath her boots. The Valkyrie's Grace came alive one last time, its engines roaring weakly, its weapons charging with a glow that painted the walls in blue light. Lyra looked at the stars again. Her eyes softened for a moment, her thoughts drifting to the people who had believed in her, who had fought beside her. "You did your part," she whispered. "Now it's my turn." Outside, the Xyreth fleet prepared to fire. 1,000 cannons glowed with deadly light. The alien captain watched from his throne, confident, calm. But Lyra Hale, the last human standing, was smiling. Her ship's targeting system locked onto the enemy flagship. The reactor lights pulsed brighter. The AI's voice trembled. "All power ready, Commander." Lyra took a deep breath and whispered, "Then let's remind them who we are." With one final press of the button, the Valkyrie's grace fired. The beam that shot out was blinding, pure energy tearing through the void, slicing into the Xyreth flagship. The alien fleet erupted in confusion, alarms blaring across their channels. The first explosion rippled through space, bright as a newborn star. Lyra felt the force of it shake her bones. The ship's lights flared, then dimmed, systems crashed, the AI's voice flickered out. She stood alone in the silence that followed, surrounded by the distant roar of fire and metal. Her ship was dying, but she felt no fear, only pride. Because in that moment, Commander Lyra Hale knew she had become exactly what the Xyreth feared most. A legend. The explosion still burned in the distance, a silent flower of light drifting among the stars. The alien fleet had felt the sting of her defiance, and though the damage was small compared to their vast numbers, it was enough to make them angry. The darkness around Epsilon 3 filled again with movement, massive Xyreth warships turning their cold eyes toward the last human vessel. Inside Valkyrie's Grace, Commander Lyra Hale leaned against the control panel, her breath ragged. The ship's hull groaned, sparks raining from the ceiling. The attack had drained what little energy remained. She could feel the deck trembling under her boots, the pulse of the dying reactor echoing like a heartbeat. "Reactor power at 2%, came the flickering voice of the ship's AI. "Shields offline, weapons non-functional." Lyra forced herself to stand tall, her fingers gripping the console. "We hit their flagship," she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "We made them bleed." The AI's voice crackled. "Enemy fleet approaching, estimated contact in 2 minutes." Lyra looked out through the cracked viewport. The stars had vanished behind the wall of approaching ships. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Their lights glimmered cold and precise, like a swarm of metal predators closing in for the kill. Then the comm screen flickered to life again. The alien fleet captain appeared once more, his scaled face twisted with anger. His silver armor glowed faintly in the dark as he leaned forward. "You insolent creature," he hissed. "You dare strike at a Xyreth flagship, you think one spark will change anything." Lyra wiped blood from her cheek, standing tall despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "One spark is all it takes," she replied calmly. "That's how wildfires start." The captain laughed, a deep, cruel sound that sent a chill through the broken bridge. "You are amusing, human, arrogant until the end. Do you really believe you can defeat us? Your kind has fallen, your worlds are gone. You stand alone in the ashes of your own weakness." Lyra tilted her head, her gaze unwavering. "Funny thing about ashes," she said. "That's where the next fire is born." The alien captain's expression darkened. "Enough of your riddles. You will surrender what remains of your ship. Your defiance ends here." Lyra almost smiled. "I don't think so." She cut the transmission again. Silence filled the bridge, broken only by the faint hum of what was left of the engines. For a long moment she simply stood there, her hands braced on the console, her shoulders shaking, not from fear, but from exhaustion and pain. Then she took a slow, steady breath and looked toward the dimly glowing reactor readouts. "AI," she said softly, "how much power can we still redirect to the core?" "Reactor integrity is unstable," the AI warned. "Any further strain may result in total breach." Lyra nodded slightly, her eyes glinting with the same quiet determination that had carried humanity through centuries of impossible wars. "Good. That's exactly what I need." The ship creaked as she made her way through the narrow, flickering corridors. The air was thick with smoke and heat. Every step echoed in the silence, a haunting reminder of the lives once aboard. The Valkyrie's Grace had been a flagship once, home to thousands of brave men and women. Now it was a tomb. Lyra paused by a shattered viewport, looking out into the endless black. The stars beyond were sharp and distant, like the eyes of ancient gods watching from afar. "I'm not ready to join you yet," she murmured under her breath. "Not until I make them remember what we were." She reached the reactor chamber, a massive circular room glowing with sickly blue light. Sparks danced along the floor as energy pulsed through the failing systems. In the center, behind layers of cracked shielding, the core throbbed like a dying heart. Lyra approached the main console, her fingers trembling as she typed commands. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing systems she hadn't accessed in years, protocols buried deep beneath the official codes. She hesitated only for a moment, then whispered, "Authorization. Commander Lyra Hale, Code Valkyrie 0. "Access granted," said the AI, its voice quieter now, weaker. "You are activating restricted protocol." Lyra stared at the swirling reactor light, her reflection caught in the glass. "Not restricted," she said softly. "Forgotten." The AI paused. "Commander, this protocol is not meant for use. It could destroy." "I know," Lyra interrupted, her voice steady. "But if I'm going down, I'm not going alone." For a moment, the AI was silent. Then, almost reluctantly, it replied, "Understood, Commander." The room filled with a low, rumbling hum as the reactor began to shift, ancient mechanisms stirring to life. Symbols from an older era appeared on the screens, warnings from long-dead engineers. "Caution, Singularity Core engaged." Lyra took a step back, watching the light intensify. The core wasn't just a power source, it was a weapon, a relic of the old wars. Humanity had sworn never to use it again, but desperate times didn't honor old promises. "Commander," the AI said quietly, "enemy fleet now within firing range." Lyra smiled faintly, "Then it's time." She turned and started back toward the bridge. Her body ached with every movement, but her steps were firm. She had no illusions of survival. She wasn't fighting to live anymore. She was fighting to be remembered. The ship shuddered as enemy fire began to strike again. Hull plates ripped away, alarms screamed, and metal howled like something alive. Lyra gripped the railings as she climbed the last steps to the command deck. When she reached the bridge, she looked out once more at the stars. The alien ships were close now, so close she could see the glowing patterns along their hulls, could almost feel the cold hatred behind their weapons. Her eyes narrowed. "You asked who stands before you," she whispered. "You're about to find out." She sat back in the command chair, blood dripping onto the console, and stared at the countdown flashing on the screen. "AI," she said, voice steady, "prepare to initiate Valkyrie's vow." The AI hesitated. "Commander, once activated, there will be no escape." Lyra's lips curved into a small, tired smile. "I know, that's the point." And as the alien fleet surrounded her, tightening its noose around humanity's final spark, Commander Lyra Hale reached for the control and whispered to the stars. "Let's finish this." The stars trembled as the alien fleet closed in, their ships blotting out the light of distant suns. The Valkyrie's grace floated amid the wreckage of humanity's dreams, a lone spark against an ocean of darkness. Its metal hull was cracked and scorched, pieces of it drifting into the void like falling ashes. Inside, Commander Lyra Hale sat at the helm, her eyes locked on the approaching wall of enemies. The ship's warning sirens had gone silent. There was no point in alarms anymore. Every system that could scream had already screamed itself into death. Only the deep hum of the reactor remained, a faint pulse, the heartbeat of a dying warrior. "Commander," said the AI, its voice little more than static. "Enemy fleet within 2,000 kilometers. They are preparing their final barrage." Lyra exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the cracked glass of her helmet. "Let them come," she whispered. "They'll remember this day." She stared at the holographic display in front of her. Red dots filled the screen, enemy ships surrounding her from every side. There was no way out, but Lyra wasn't looking for escape. She was looking for impact. "AI," she said quietly, "divert all remaining power to the rail cannons. I want every last bit of energy in those barrels." "Commander," the AI warned, "that will destabilize the core further, the reactor." "We'll hold," Lyra interrupted. Her voice was firm, calm. "It has to." The ship shuddered as the systems obeyed, lights flickering across the control panels. The energy transfer groaned through the hull like thunder, the cannons beginning to glow with a dangerous blue light. Lyra's gaze turned toward the viewport, where the Xyreth ships loomed larger now, cold and perfect, their formation flawless. The enemy fleet captain's ship sat at the center like a crown jewel, its metallic surface reflecting the dying light of Epsilon 3's red sun. She smiled faintly. "Target the flagship." The alien fleet moved in a synchronized rhythm, their sleek ships gliding through the void like a school of predators. On the flagship, the Xyreth captain stood tall, watching the lone human vessel through a transparent wall of reinforced glass. His golden eyes narrowed in disdain. "She still resists," one of his officers hissed, bowing slightly. "Her defiance is meaningless." The captain's mouth curled into something like amusement. No, it is predictable. Humans always resist, no matter how hopeless. That is why they burn so easily. Orders, my captain. The captain turned his gaze to the endless dark beyond. Destroy her. Let this be the final echo of their species. Back aboard Valkyrie's Grace, the power surges were tearing through the ship. Sparks rained from the ceiling, panels burst open, and the floor trembled beneath Lyra's boots. The air smelled of smoke and ozone, but she didn't move from her chair. Her fingers flew across the controls. The targeting systems locked onto the alien flagship. The rail cannons glowed brighter, shaking violently as their coils charged. Firing sequence ready, the AI reported. Warning, reactor instability, critical levels. Lyra took a deep breath, then let's make it count. Outside, the void came alive with chaos. The Xyreth ships opened fire in unison, 1,000 beams of light converging on one small human vessel. Explosions tore through the Valkyrie's Grace, ripping away armor plates, shattering wings, and burning through decks. The ship screamed like a living thing. Lyra gritted her teeth as the console sparked beneath her hands. The world around her blurred into fire and light. Still, she held steady. She aimed. She waited. Steady, she murmured. Just a little closer. The alien flagship filled the viewport now, a massive wall of silver and black. Its weapons charged for the killing blow, confident in its victory. Lyra smiled through the blood running down her face. Now, she slammed her hand onto the fire control. The rail cannons roared. A blinding beam of blue-white energy shot forth from the human ship, cutting through the void like a blade of light. It struck the alien flagship dead center. The impact shattered the silence of space as energy rippled across the Xyreth formation. The captain's eyes widened in shock as his ship trembled. Impossible, he shouted. Their weapons were dead. But it was too late. The rail beam pierced through armor, through decks, through power conduits that fed the heart of the Xyreth ship. A massive explosion erupted from within, consuming the command vessel in a storm of fire and light. The shockwave rippled outward, smashing nearby ships like toys in the path of a hurricane. Lyra gripped her chair as the force hit Valkyrie's Grace. Her ship spun violently, alarms blaring, the hull screaming under pressure. But she didn't stop. Her eyes burned with fierce determination. Recalibrate targeting, she yelled. Fire at will. The ship obeyed, even as it died. The secondary guns spat bursts of energy, tearing through more Xyreth cruisers. Each shot was weaker than the last, but every explosion that followed was another defiant heartbeat of humanity echoing through the void. The alien fleet began to pull back, their perfect formation breaking. Fear spread among them, something they had never felt in the face of a human before. And on the bridge of Valkyrie's Grace, Lyra allowed herself a single, shaky breath. That's for Earth, she whispered. But the victory was fleeting. The ship's power readings fell sharply. Warning lights turned red. The AI's voice trembled as it reported, reactor integrity compromised, core breach imminent. Lyra's vision blurred, her body aching. She slumped against the console, smiling faintly despite the chaos. Good work, she murmured. Outside, what remained of the Xyreth fleet began to recover from the shock. The survivors regrouped, their weapons charging again, ready to erase the last human from existence. The AI's voice returned, softer now. Commander, shall I begin emergency evacuation? Lyra shook her head weakly. No, there's no escape pod left, and even if there was, I'm not running. She looked once more at the stars. The same stars humanity had once dreamed of reaching, the same stars now watching as their final daughter stood her ground. AI, she said, her voice quiet but sure, begin preparations for Valkyrie's vow. The AI hesitated. Commander, are you certain? Lyra nodded slowly, her gaze steady. You heard me, let's make this count. As the dying ship began to glow with the light of the awakening weapon deep within its core, Lyra closed her eyes and whispered to herself. This isn't the end, it's the reminder. The Valkyrie's Grace, battered and broken, turned its nose once more toward the heart of the alien fleet. The last human ship was ready to make history. The Valkyrie's Grace drifted through the debris of battle, its hull cracked open to the void. Fires burned behind shattered windows, their orange glow flickering like the heartbeat of a dying star. Yet in the center of that ruin stood Commander Lyra Hale, bloodied, breathless, and unbroken. She stared at the screen before her, the fatting lights of the alien fleet surrounding her ship like vultures circling a wounded animal. But she wasn't afraid. She had accepted long ago that fear was a luxury humans couldn't afford. Reactor stability critical, the AI reported, its voice dim and fatting. Valkyrie's vow sequence is ready for activation, awaiting your command. Lyra exhaled long and slow. Not yet, she said softly. They're still watching. Let's give them something to remember. She looked toward the viewport where the enemy flagship, what was left of it, drifted in the distance. The explosion she'd caused had wounded them deeply, but the Xyreth were relentless. Already new ships were moving to fill the void, their sleek black forms glowing with charged weapons. A transmission blinked on her console, the fleet captain again. Lyra hesitated for a heartbeat, then pressed accept. The image of the silver-scaled alien filled the bridge once more, his regal armor marred by burns, his face twisted in rage. "You dare continue this farce," he snarled. "You've doomed yourself, human. You will die here alone, and your species will be nothing but a whisper in the dust." Lyra straightened. Her suit was torn, her shoulder bleeding, but her voice was calm. "Maybe, but even whispers can carry far when the wind is strong enough." The alien's jaw tightened. "You think this is strength? This is madness. You stand against an empire that has conquered 1,000 worlds. What could one dying human hope to achieve?" Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "You wouldn't understand." He leaned forward, his golden eyes gleaming. "Enlighten me." Lyra looked at him for a long moment before speaking, her voice low and steady. "You've read about us, haven't you? The stories your kind tells about humans, the feral species from the forgotten world, the ones who rose from dirt and fire, who built machines to reach the stars. Your scholars say we're reckless, dangerous, prone to chaos." The captain sneered. "And look where that chaos brought you." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Yes, it brought us here to you." The alien frowned, confusion flickering in his expression. Lyra continued, her words soft but sharp. "Do you know what your legends say about us, Captain? They say humans were the first to defy extinction not once, but 1,000 times. That when the darkness came, when the cold tried to erase us, we fought with stones, fire, and will. You fear us not because we're strong. You fear us because we never stop. Even when everything's gone, we find a way to stand again." Her gaze hardened, "And that's exactly what I'm doing now." The captain's composure cracked. "You're insane," he hissed. "You think your death will matter, you think one ship can change anything." Lyra looked past him at the stars behind his shoulder. "No, but a story can." She cut the transmission before he could respond. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. Lyra could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders, the countless humans who had fought, built, and bled for survival. The voices of her ancestors echoed in her mind, whispering across centuries of struggle and hope. She turned back to the AI. "How long until reactor breach?" 2 minutes, it replied. "Energy levels rising exponentially. Commander, once initiated, containment will fail. The singularity core will collapse." Lyra nodded. "Good, let's make sure it counts." She placed her hand on the main console, fingers brushing over the controls like she was touching something alive. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, eyes burning, determined. "This ship was built to protect humanity," she said quietly. "It will finish that mission." The AI hesitated. "Commander, may I ask a question?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Go ahead." "Why fight alone? Why not retreat when there was still time?" Lyra's eyes softened, and for the first time a flicker of sadness passed across her face. "Because someone had to stay, someone had to remind them that we were here, that we didn't vanish quietly." She looked out at the enemy fleet once more. They were moving now, regrouping, preparing to strike again. Thousands of ships, thousands of lives, united in the belief that they could erase one stubborn human. Lyra leaned forward. "They're afraid," she whispered. "They don't even realize it yet, but they're afraid." The AI didn't respond. It didn't have to. The hum of the reactor grew louder, shaking the ship as energy built to impossible levels. Lyra stood tall, her hands steady on the controls. "For Earth," she said softly, "for all of us." "Confirmed," the AI replied. "Initiating Valkyrie's vow in 30 seconds." The lights dimmed, the bridge filled with a deep, resonant vibration. Blue light spilled from the floor panels, casting long shadows across Lyra's face. As the countdown began, she closed her eyes. Memories flashed before her, the green forests of home, the laughter of her crew, the faces of people she had promised to protect. Each image burned bright and then faded, leaving only the stars. When the timer reached 0, she opened her eyes again. The enemy fleet loomed ahead, weapons glowing with lethal light. "Commander," the AI said softly, "it has been an honor." Lyra smiled faintly, her hand hovering over the final control. "The honor's all mine." And then, with a whisper that carried through the void, she pressed the button. The Valkyrie's grace came alive in a blaze of light. The reactor's energy surged outward, expanding into a brilliant sphere that swallowed the stars. And as the Xyreth fleet closed in for the kill, Commander Lyra Hale stood her ground, calm, unyielding, and utterly human. She was the storm their legends had warned about. The explosion began like a whisper. A low hum filled the void, rising in pitch until it became a roar that shook the stars themselves. The Valkyrie's grace glowed brighter and brighter, her broken hull turning into molten light. Inside, Commander Lyra Hale stood tall, her eyes fixed on the enemy fleet through the cracked glass of the viewport. She could see them, the Xyreth ships, thousands strong, forming a perfect wall of death before her. They had no idea what was coming. The ship's AI spoke softly through the chaos. Core energy reaching 90%, containment failure imminent. Lyra gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white. "Let it rise, don't stop it." "Commander," the AI warned, "this will destroy everything within range, including—" "I know," she interrupted gently. "That's the idea." The hum grew louder, vibrating through the metal floors, through her bones. She could feel the ship's heartbeat matching her own. This was humanity's last breath, and she was its voice. On the Xyreth flagship, panic had begun to spread. Alarms blared. Sensors screamed warnings in a dozen alien tongues. The fleet captain stood at the center of the command deck, his claws digging into the railing. "Report," he shouted. One of his officers turned, trembling. "The human ship's reactor, it's overloading. We detect a surge of unknown energy. Power readings are impossible, sir." The captain snarled, "Destroy it now." Their cannons lit the darkness, a storm of fire raining down on the Valkyrie's grace. Energy blasts struck her hull, tearing pieces away, but the ship did not fall. Instead, the light within her only grew brighter, stronger, alive. The captain stared, realization dawning far too late. "No, it's not a reactor breach," he whispered. "It's a weapon." Lyra stood in the center of the bridge as the storm hit. The ship shook violently, panels exploding, fire bursting from the walls. But she didn't move. She felt calm, peaceful, even as if the chaos around her had faded into silence. Her voice was steady as she whispered, "This is for Earth, for the children who'll never see the stars, for the ones we lost." The AI's voice wavered. "Commander, energy levels at 99%. Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Then let's show them what it means to be human." "Affirmative," the AI said softly. "Goodbye, Commander." The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Lyra closed her eyes. She saw flashes of her past, her first flight at the academy, her mother's smile, her crew laughing in the mess hall before their last mission. Faces, names, memories, all of them part of her. 7, 6, 5. The light around her became blinding. The floor trembled as energy ripped through the ship. 4, 3. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "We never surrendered, remember that." 2, 1. The Valkyrie's grace exploded in a flash brighter than a sun. But this was no ordinary blast. The singularity weapon, Valkyrie's vow, unfolded like a blooming star, releasing waves of pure energy that bent space itself. The Xyreth fleet, mighty and endless, was caught in the storm. Ships disintegrated before they could even attempt to flee. The sky filled with light, with the burning echoes of destruction and creation intertwined. From the surface of distant planets, the explosion looked like a second dawn. The black of space turned white, and for a moment the universe held its breath. When the light finally faded, nothing remained. The Xyreth fleet was gone, thousands of warships reduced to drifting ash. Only silence followed, vast and eternal. Far away in the command halls of the Dominion, news of the battle reached the High Council. The admirals stood frozen, their scaled faces pale with disbelief. "The entire fleet lost," one whispered. Another trembled, "to one human ship." No one answered, no one dared to speak. At last, the eldest of them, a being who had lived through 100 wars, spoke softly. The legends were true. The room fell silent. He looked up at the holographic projection of the human sector, now a graveyard of light. They warned us long ago, he said, his voice shaking, that humans would burn brighter than any star before they fell, that when cornered they become something beyond understanding. He turned away, whispering the ancient words of the Xyreth prophecy. Beware the fireborn, beware the ones who never yield. And somewhere deep in the quiet of space, where time itself seemed to hesitate, a spark of light still drifted. The remnants of the Valkyrie's grace floated among the ashes, its frame cracked, its systems gone, but something remained. A flicker, a heartbeat. Inside the wreckage, the ship's AI came back online for a brief moment, its damaged circuits catching a faint signal. "Commander," it whispered weakly. "Reactor output, residual energy detected." The signal came from the heart of the explosion, a pulse of human energy still burning against the dark. The AI's final log recorded a single message before fading forever. Humanity endures. And though no one could hear it, the light that drifted from the ruins of the last human ship carried her final words across the stars. "We're not gone," Lyra's voice echoed faintly, carried by the waves of radiation and memory. "We became the fire, and fire never truly dies." Her legend spread quietly at first, told in whispers between traders and smugglers who swore they'd seen a ghost ship moving through the void. They said it appeared out of nowhere, glowing faintly, guided by a woman's silhouette on its bridge. Her eyes were like stars, her voice a calm whisper through the static. Some said she was vengeance, others said she was hope. But all agreed on one thing. The Xyreth Dominion never returned to that part of space again. And every time a young pilot looked up at the sky and saw a flash of unexplained light, they remembered the story of the woman who stood against 1,000 ships and smiled. The story of Commander Lyra Hale. The fire that would never go out. The darkness of space had never felt so still. The remnants of the Xyreth fleet drifted in silence, their once proud ships now shattered fragments, scattered across the void. Where once there had been a wall of unstoppable force, now there was nothing but the haunting emptiness of victory and loss. In the center of that silence, Valkyrie's grace remained. The battered, broken ship had carried humanity's last stand, and now it drifted like a ghost among the stars. The damage was catastrophic. Hull breaches ran along the ship's length, exposing the dark interior to the void. The once brilliant engines were cold and silent, but still, something remained. Deep inside the ship in the heart of the wreckage, a faint pulse of energy flickered. It was weak, barely a whisper, but it was there. A signal that refused to die. Lyra Hale's eyes fluttered open, her head throbbing with pain. The bridge was a wreck. Sparks arced from exposed wiring, and the control panels were nothing but melted remnants of their former selves. She could feel the cold of space through the thin, damaged walls of the Valkyrie's grace. Her body felt like it had been torn apart and stitched back together, bruised, battered, broken, but she was alive. Her fingers twitched as she reached for the console, ignoring the sharp sting of pain. "AI?" Her voice came out in a rasp, hoarse and weak. "What happened?" The ship's AI, though fragmented and barely functional, responded, its voice distant. "Commander, you're alive. I can barely calculate system status. Energy levels critical." Lyra blinked, focusing on the flickering screens in front of her. The ship was nothing but a shell now, but there was still a spark of something within it. She could feel it in the air, a faint hum of energy pulsing through the walls. "Are the Xyreth," she began, but her voice faltered. She had to know, had it worked, had she done enough? The AI's voice came through, quieter now, almost like a whisper. "The fleet destroyed. They are gone. The last human ship made them pay." Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, a strange relief filling her chest. The battle was over. Humanity had fought. They had made their mark on the galaxy, and though she couldn't see it, she could feel it. Her legacy was alive, but there was no joy in victory. There was only a quiet ache. She had won, but she had lost so much. Hours passed as Lyra worked through the wreckage, pulling herself to her feet, using whatever remained of the ship's systems to guide her. She had to check on the life support systems. She had to know if there were survivors. She had to know if the last of humanity could still breathe. The corridors of the Valkyrie's grace were dark and cold. Her boots clanged against the steel floor, echoing in the silence that had taken over. There was no crew now, no voices to guide her, just the soft hum of a dying ship. Every step she took was a reminder of the world that had been lost, the people who had once called this ship home. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lyra reached the ship's central control room. It was still dim, the flickering lights casting long shadows across the walls. She slumped into the captain's chair, her body trembling from exhaustion, her mind racing with thoughts of Earth, of the crew who had fought beside her. There were no words for the emptiness she felt, no words to fill the gap left by those who had fallen. "AI," she whispered, "is there anything left?" The AI's response was slow, barely a pulse against the blackness. Life support systems minimal, environmental controls non-functional, reactor no longer stable. The ship is dying. Lyra stared at the readouts, the numbers flashing before her. She could feel the weight of the ship's death, the weight of humanity's last hope slipping through her fingers. But even now, with everything fading, a thought remained. A small, stubborn thought. There had to be something left, something, anything. With great effort, Lyra reached for the console again, her fingers trembling as she typed in a command. The AI responded immediately, and though its voice was faint, it still held a hint of recognition. Command input detected. Initiating protocol, Horizon. Lyra froze. Horizon. She remembered. It was a secret project, one born from the ashes of war, the last hope for humanity. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a possibility, a chance for something more. The AI's voice grew stronger. Horizon protocol initiated, transmitting data to nearby colonies, humanity's legacy preserved. Lyra's heart raced. "You mean?" "Escape pods, data backup, Earth's archives." The AI's voice faltered. "Legacy secured." A slow smile tugged at the corners of Lyra's lips. She could feel the tears threatening to rise, but she held them back. It wasn't time for that. She had done what she needed to do. Her ship, her people, humanity itself would live on. Even if she didn't survive this, humanity would endure. The AI spoke once more, softer now. "Commander, I will stay online until the end." Lyra nodded, her vision blurry with the weight of everything she had carried. "Thank you, old friend," she whispered. "You did your part." She sat back in the chair, her hands resting gently on the controls. The Valkyrie's grace was broken, but humanity's fire still burned. As the final light of the ship flickered out, Lyra closed her eyes and let the silence wash over her. She had no regrets. She had given everything for the future, for the promise that humanity would rise again, stronger than ever. The darkness of space stretched on, but for Lyra Hale the stars would always shine. The fire would never die. The silence of space stretched on, cold and unyielding. The Valkyrie's grace was nothing but a ghost, its fractured remains drifting through the darkness like the last whispers of a long-lost dream. Commander Lyra Hale sat in the captain's chair, eyes closed, her body still as though she were sleeping. But she wasn't sleeping. She was waiting, waiting for the inevitable end. The ship's lights flickered one last time, dimming to near nothingness. The ship's systems were long gone, and the AI's presence had faded, leaving only an echo. Yet for some reason, the fire inside Lyra never wavered. Her mind, though tired, refused to give up. She had done her part. Humanity's legacy was secured. Its fire would continue to burn across the galaxy. But a question lingered, one that wouldn't let her rest. Was it truly the end? Her eyes snapped open. She had done everything right. She had fought, she had sacrificed, and now there was nothing left but the cold emptiness of space. The mission was over, the fleet destroyed, humanity's final chapter written in the stars. And yet, Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by the soft, dying hum of the ship's AI. It was barely a whisper now, but it still had a presence, a sliver of life within the ruins of the Valkyrie's grace. "Commander Lyra," the AI rasped, you are the last human." She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to break down. She could feel her heart pounding, the weight of the world pressing down on her chest. She had lost so much. Her crew, her friends, her family, but she couldn't let it go, not now, not after everything. She had come too far to let it all end in silence. "What's left then?" she whispered, the words trembling in the empty space around her. "What's left for me?" The AI's voice responded, its tone soft but steady. "There is still a choice. There is still a chance." Lyra tilted her head, confusion furrowing her brow. A chance for what?" "A chance for you," the AI answered, its voice full of a strange, faint hope. To rebuild, to rise from the ashes, the Valkyrie's grace may be broken, but the data you initiated, the Horizon Protocol, it's still there, still intact. Humanity's legacy is not just in the archives, it is in you. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She had thought the protocol was just a fail-safe, a last-ditch attempt to save what could be saved. But now she understood. The data, the archives, the escape pods, they were not just a backup. They were a foundation, a seed, a way forward. Her eyes widened. You mean? The AI continued, its voice growing fainter but still resolute. The archives were sent to the nearby colonies, but there is more. You are the key to humanity's future. The data contains everything needed to start again, to begin anew. If you survive, there is a chance for humanity to rise once more from the ashes of its destruction. Lyra leaned forward, her hands trembling as she grasped the edges of the console. I didn't think I would survive. I thought this was the end. Not the end, the AI said, almost as if it were comforting her. The end of one chapter, but a new one is waiting to be written. Lyra closed her eyes, the weight of it all crashing down on her. She thought about the world she had lost, the Earth she would never see again. She thought about the faces of her crew, her friends. She had failed them. She had failed humanity. But had she? Her eyes snapped open and a spark of something deep within her, flickered to life. It was the fire that had burned in humanity from the very beginning, the fire that refused to be extinguished. She could feel it now, the memories, the lessons, the strength of those who had fought beside her. She wasn't the last. She was the first to stand again, the first to rebuild. She stood slowly, her legs shaking with the effort. Her mind was clearer now. The choice was hers to make. She had been given a chance, humanity's chance, and she couldn't waste it. I'm not the last, Lyra whispered to herself, her voice steady now. I'm the beginning. The AI's voice gave one final pulse of energy. Commander, the data transmission is complete. The escape pods are functional. There is a chance, but you must act quickly. Lyra stepped away from the console, her eyes set on the starry void beyond the broken viewport. She could see the remnants of the Xyreth fleet, scattered like broken bones across the sky. Their dominance was shattered. The galaxy had felt the weight of humanity's defiance, and now it was her turn to carry the flame. The escape pods, Horizon, the data. Her heart raced as she rushed toward the emergency hatch. She had one chance left, one chance to save what was left of humanity. To rise again, to rebuild, to remind the universe that humans never gave up, that they always stood again, no matter how dark it seemed. As she entered the escape pod and sealed the door, the last words of the AI echoed in her mind, a soft whisper that carried the weight of the galaxy. Remember, Commander, the fire never dies. Lyra's hands gripped the controls, her heart pounding in her chest. The escape pod launched into the cold abyss, leaving the Valkyrie's grace behind, but carrying with it a message for anyone who would listen. Humanity had fallen, but it would rise again, and Lyra Hale would be there at the forefront. No matter how dark the galaxy became.